Thank you for joining me in this video covering portions of the System and Units tabs found under Settings on the home screen. We will not be covering the Devices tab in this video as it was covered in depth in the video Bluetooth Connection number 2. If you have not watched that video, please do for further training with that tab. Also, we will only be covering the portions of System and Units that will be most used, as some of these functions typically should not be changed. Please turn on your tablet and allow the icon software to load. It is not necessary to turn on your total station for this video. After the software loads, you will be presented with the icon home screen. In the lower right corner, you will find the Settings palette, which contains the System and Units tabs. We'll start with System. The About tab shows you information regarding the software version, build version, and other related information. If you are dealing with a Datum Tech representative and they ask you at some point what version of software you are working with, this is where you would find it. We will not be dealing with icon analytics at this point. Touchscreen mode is one of the most used sections of this tab. Once in that function, you may touch the blue writing in the upper right corner of the screen, which describes what mode of touch system you are currently in. By clicking in that area, you will be taken to a screen that allows you to choose from 3 modes. Touch Pen is the most sensitive screen type and the only one that will allow you to work with the stylus that typically comes with the tablet. Being the most sensitive, this mode will also be highly affected by any water that touches the screen, whether it be raindrops or sweat. This will cause the screen to think it's being touched by a finger and cause it to open functions you aren't intending to open. To overcome this, change the mode to the next mode in the list, which is Touch Water. This is the least sensitive mode, and as described in parentheses to the right, the stylus pen is disabled in this mode. The final mode available is Touch Glove. Use this mode when wearing work gloves and it's not raining. This mode is the middle ground of sensitivity and disables the stylus pen. Please note, once you've selected the mode you wish to work in, you have to click the green check at the lower right corner of the screen for the mode to take effect. This is true for every selection that we will be covering in this video. No changes will take place if you don't click the green check to accept them. The Sound tab is not necessary to function to change. You may adjust the settings to your preference. Within the Display tab, there are 2 functions we will deal with. The first is Coordinate Order. We will be covering coordinates in more detail in future videos pertaining to project and job creation, but for now the important thing to know is that you want your settings to be NEH. You can change it by clicking the blue area to the right of the coordinate order and selecting this mode. The second function is Mode. By clicking the blue writing to the right, you will be presented with 3 options: Simple, Standard, and Precise. These are referring to the way measurements are presented to you on the map screen during layout procedures. Simple will only show you measurements in quarter-inch increments. Standard will show you in 16th-inch increments, and Precise will show you in 1/64th-inch increments. The best practice would be to leave it in Standard. User permissions is important to understand if you find yourself in a situation where some of your apps have disappeared. Most likely, someone accidentally clicked on buttons they weren't supposed to and toggled them off. I will simply scroll down the list of the most typical programs that should be toggled on, and then in the future you can change them to your preferences if you'd like. The ones that should be on are Sketching, As Built, Layout Points, Layout Lines, Checks, and all of the data handling apps, and all of the settings apps. By toggling any of these off, they will disappear from your home screen. To make a program reappear, toggle it back on. As an example, I'm going to make As Built disappear. Language allows you to select other languages as it implies. This is particularly useful when working with Spanish-speaking coworkers, as is often the case. Under active licenses, the most important part is to make sure you are in the build version if that choice is presented to you. Different software versions may present different options to you. It is not advisable to change the settings you are provided. If you find yourself in the site version, some of your user permission options will appear differently, and some of your layout functions will behave differently. Site is made more for surveyors and not construction workers. You should not be dealing with Add Licenses tab as it requires entitlement numbers provided by the vendor. Next, we will return to the home screen and then enter the Units tab. Under Distance, the only setting that you should deal with is Distance. By clicking the blue writing to the right, you will be presented with options to select the distance settings. It is important that you select the proper setting at this point, as this choice will override the project settings and the way your information is not only presented to you, but the way it's imported as well. Different software versions may present the options for selection with different wording, but the important thing to note is that you should select US feet and inches or US feet fractional, depending on how it's displayed on your tablet. There is a measurement difference between international feet and US feet. This can be described further upon request, but for now, please note that there is a difference, and as we are working in the US, that is the selection we should choose. If you are watching this video after your project has already been set up in the tablet and you find that the units have been set to international feet the whole time, do not change them at this point. Finish your project, and the next project you start, make sure your settings are correct before you begin layout. The difference between feet and feet fractional, or feet and inches, is that feet is presented in decimal format and fractional feet is in fractions. Decimal feet are used by civil surveyors and some concrete layout teams. You will not need to change the Angle tab as you won't be working with or calculating angles. Tolerances is a tab you will want to visit if you are receiving error messages with your setup tolerances. You will not be working with GNSS, so you don't need to worry about the information provided there. The information you will be interested in is under Total Station. By clicking the blue writing in the upper right corner of the screen across from Tolerance, you will be presented with 6 options. The first 3 are preset, and the last 3 can be set to your preference. By cycling through the first 3 selections, you can see the differences in the amount of error the software will allow when using the setup and stakeout functions. Note that stakeout is the same as layout points. You should know that when performing a setup, if you are out of the predefined tolerance that you select, you will not be able to accept the setup and you will not be able to begin working. There are several reasons why this may happen. To name a few, your total station may not be level. Your rod may not have been level when you measured your point. The tip of your rod may not have been precisely on the point. Your rod's level bubble may be out of calibration. You may have the wrong prism type selected. You may have accidentally selected the wrong point from the map view as your target. The point you are selecting may have been incorrectly created, or the point you are measuring on the ground may be incorrect. An example of the last option would be bad control line intersections. The concrete layout team may have errors in their control lines which would cause the intersection to be out of alignment with the building. No matter how many times you measure it, you will not get the correct reading if this is the case. At that point, you would select another point to measure and let the concrete layout team know that they have a problem with their control. Before you do that, though, please make sure that it wasn't one of the other possibilities I mentioned that would be your responsibility to fix. Always check yourself before you assume that it's someone else's fault. Even if you are 100% correct and must tell someone that their layout is incorrect, please do so carefully and be ready with proof before you present them with the problem. While performing layout, if you are out of the predefined tolerance setting, you will receive an error message that says you are out of tolerance, but you will still be able to store the point. At that point, you will notice that the color of the stored point will be either green, blue, red, or yellow, depending on how you are out of tolerance. Blue and red are referring to elevations out of tolerance, which doesn't matter if you're not measuring elevations. Yellow is referring to a point that is out of horizontal tolerance. If you have a reason for laying out a point away from the designed coordinate provided by the office, and you know for a fact that where you laid out the point is where it should be, the color won't be a problem. If you feel you have laid out the point correctly, though, and you are still receiving the error message and a yellow point, you should check for the same issues I brought up concerning the setup. A green point upon storing means you are good both horizontally and vertically. In general, your tolerance setting should be set to medium, and you shouldn't have to change it once it's set. Here is an example of the differences between the first three settings. With your total station setup, it will allow you 1 inch and a quarter, and your stakeout will allow you roughly 2.5 inches. Medium will only allow you a 1/2 inch of error on your setup and a 1/2 inch error on your stakeout. And precise only allows you 1/8 of inch on your setup and 1/8 inch on your stakeout. Excuse me, 15/64. The reason we don't use precise is because 9 times out of 10, the control lines provided to us by the GC aren't going to be that accurate. Under atmosphere, set your temperature to Fahrenheit and your pressure to mercury inches, which is represented by INHG. Currency won't be used. This concludes the video pertaining to system and units. Please continue to the next video, which will cover project setup and organization.